When we first met and got the chance to work together, MLB was doing a lot of youth development, especially in the inner city, with outcomes intended like basically bringing the game back into the city, diversity. And it hasn't come up in the last couple of years. I'm wondering, have the tactics shifted away from that? Is it still important? We just did this Gen Z study, and I think you've seen some of the data. I think it's 19% of Gen Z sees themselves as a baseball fan versus 34% of other generations, and that's not unique to baseball. This is a overall challenge for sports right now. Esports and other time people are spending on these devices is a war that we're not necessarily winning or even keeping up with. So I don't know if you mind sharing an update or any insight you can into that sort of how are we pulling in the next generation of fans and how have the tactics shifted, let's say, in the last few years.
Yeah, let me dive into that. I have a sort of an interesting sort of point around to kind of dive into the stat that you laid out, right? So I think we've all seen the stats that show Gen Z identifies less as a sports fan than other generations, even at that age point. Look, I think there's clearly hurdles. I'm not dismissing the hurdles. I would just say that I also think that sports is not reaching out to those fans in a way that makes them feel like they're part of the community, right? So we had a ton of great things that happened this year. Like I'm just thinking off the top of my head, Fernando Tatis had this viral bat flip moment in the postseason this year that got a ton of buzz. I mean, I think it had like 20 million views on the social platforms or whatever. So you start to dig into that a little bit, and I bet if you asked Gen Z, did you see that bat flip moment? You'd have a huge percentage of people that said that they saw it or they engaged it or they thought it was interesting, right? Then if you ask those same people, are you a sports fan? They're like, well, no, I'm not a sports fan. I didn't go to a game, or I didn't, I don't have cable TV, so I didn't, watch on a nightly basis. So, I'm not a fan. You can't think that I'm a fan. And I think part of what we have to do with this audience is try to educate them around what it means to be a fan, and not try to give them this high threshold of like, yeah, you got to watch, a game for 3 hours every night of your favorite team for 162 nights a year to consider yourself a fan. There's lots of ways to be a sports fan. There's lots of ways to consume our content, and we're making that content available for you guys to do that. And by just consuming it in the normal platforms that you're on and you're interested in, that's being a sports fan. You get credit for that. We'll take you. And I think there's a little bit of that going on that'll sort itself out over time. So just one aside there that I think as an industry, we need to pay more attention to some of these types of metrics, because this generation is different. And to the extent you're asking them the same question you asked other generations, it can make them feel like they're not included. And I think we have to do a better job of including that generation. To your question around participation, we've been on that as a huge factor for sports fandom, going back, like you said, 5, 6, 7 years now. And, and a lot of the research that we've done, it shows that probably the biggest driver of someone being a sports fan is whether they played as a kid. And not only that, what's interesting, I'd have to pull the exact metric, but I think it's something like 50%. Someone whose parents played little league or higher, their children are 50% more likely to be baseball fans than someone who didn't play. And so it's not only that it's you and whether you're going to be a fan, it's also whether your children, your next generation is going to be a fan. And so I think it's just this life cycle of the more that you can get people to play and be involved in the sport, that pays dividends for, multiple generations. And so we're absolutely committed to that. The biggest innovation that we had in that space was this campaign that we called Play Ball. It sort of is in a similar vein that I sort of started with, which is that, you don't have to sign up for a team, play a 20 game schedule, go find 9 guys and an umpire to be a baseball player. There's a lot of ways you can be a baseball player, a lot like the ways that we played, wiffle ball, stick ball, playing catch in the backyard. I mean, I think a lot of people start to feel like, well, I got to pay $10,000 a year to be on a travel team or I'm not a baseball player, right? And so they feel like they're being left out of being a player. And I think what we want to say to our fans, our young people, is that, hey, I get it. Not everybody has the time or availability, capability to play, a full season, to travel, to, potentially go to a batting cage or get specialized instruction. And that's fine. We're not saying that needs to be what every person needs to do. Just if you have a glove and a ball and you can find somebody to play with, you're a baseball player. Go in the backyard and play catch. Go play